right, we're joined by a good friend, Chris Trapasso, CBS sports analyst, to talk about the NFL, talk about the Bills. I know you're big on your mock drafts, so we're going to get into that as well. How you doing, man?
Doing pretty good, Rich. It's been a while, and I appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely. We were happy to have you on. Let's talk a little bit about the NFL first in the league and sort of what you're making of it, because especially in the AFC, even to the top of the division, still record-wise, top to mid-pack is still relatively close at this point, right?
Yeah, definitely. And a lot of these teams that are in that 7-5, 6-6 range still have to play each other. So there's going to be a lot of these teams beating each other up. And on that topic, a lot of quarterbacks are beaten up. And it seems like if your quarterback is upright, your starter, like the Bills have with Josh Allen, the Chiefs have with Patrick Mahomes, that is a huge luxury to have with the likes of Kenny Pickett recently getting hurt and Trevor Lawrence to add in with Deshaun Watson and Joe Burrow in the AFC. So we expected this to be a really parity-filled AFC season, and it has been. But even down the stretch, these final 5 games, I think, are going to go down to the wire to determine which teams get in the playoffs and which seeds all of those 7 teams ultimately have.
So crystal ball it, my friend. All those teams that are in the, 7-5, 6-6 range, who do you anticipate of those teams, especially in the AFC, going deep into the tournament?
Yeah, I think the Houston Texans are a team because of the play of their quarterback, CJ Stroud, who's going to win Offensive Rookie of the Year. They'll probably make it. They'll be one of those. There's probably 7 or 8 teams right now that feel like they could be in one of those 3 wildcard spots. I think the Houston Texans get in. I think the Cleveland Browns, despite their quarterback situation, they didn't play with Dorian Thompson-Robinson, their rookie backup, this past week. They had Joe Flacco slinging the football around, which was pretty crazy to see. And he actually wasn't that bad in the first half against the Rams. I think, though, their defense, they'll get Denzel Ward back relatively soon, their star cornerback, of course, Myles Garrett, and that front along the defensive line. I think the defense will be good enough to allow them to get some ugly wins down the stretch. And I'm going to say it. I think the Bills are going to go either 5-0 or 4-1 down the stretch. Gardner Minshew for the Colts has played well, but he usually comes back to earth eventually. The Pittsburgh Steelers have a big quarterback problem and just an offensive problem as well. So I think the Bills, because of how they played of late, Joe Brady's impact on this offense, getting a little healthier for a team that has battled so many injuries, I think they could sneak in down the stretch, playing their best football late. And that's always been the goal for this Bills team, to be really peaking at the end of the season.
Yeah, for sure. I know one of the things you talked about and have been talking about in terms of your X account is NFL MVP. And typically when you talk NFL MVP, and you mentioned it earlier, and it's no surprise to anybody, this is a quarterback-driven league. So typically when the MVP is talked about, people start with the quarterbacks. But I know you've talked about some other positional players that should be talked about when it comes to NFL MVP.
Yeah, definitely. I think certainly Dak Prescott right now, the Cowboys quarterback who the Bills are going to see next week inside Highmark Stadium, he has to be the front runner right now. He hasn't really played a murderer's row of defenses, but he has been absolutely lights out. The efficiency with throwing the football down the field. We haven't seen those interceptions like we've seen the last couple of years, but Tyreek Hill and Myles Garrett, I think those 2 non-quarterbacks have been as important, or as the award kind of says, the most valuable to their teams. Now, if Josh Allen and the Bills again go 4-1 or 5-0 down the stretch, I think Allen's play will probably have been very good, like it's been for most of this season. I think he's playing as well as he has in the NFL. So he would be right up there as well. Jalen Hurts, Brock Purdy. I'm a little bit lower on them. I think the team around them, the offensive line, the scheme, the skill position players help elevate their statistics and those teams getting their wins. So I think this year, because we don't have that runaway, the Cam Newton season, the Matt Ryan season, Tom Brady or Mahomes or Aaron Rodgers, the MVP race is as open as we've ever seen it going down the stretch, which is why I think guys like Tyreek Hill or Myles Garrett should be in consideration this year.
One of the things that you in recent history have gotten known for, and I know, the casual draft nicks will, they'll mention McShay and Kuiper and those guys. And we all know that the percentages usually are terrible. Your percentages when it comes to your draft mocks have been absolutely off the hook. I mean, you have been unbelievable, arguably the best of anybody that does it. So number one, congratulations to you. Number two,
Thanks.
congratulations on the incredible foresight. And I know you put tons of work into what you do in terms of evaluation and all the players available. So let's get to the mock drafts. It's not too early to talk about it because you've already started working on some of yours and looking at other people's along the way. So going into next year, regardless of the way the season ends top three position needs for the Bills, do you think in 2024?
I think safety, defensive tackle, and wide receiver. And you could have them really in any order. I don't think that either of those three are far and away more important than the other. But what I would say is in today's NFL, even with Josh Allen as your quarterback, when in doubt, lean offense. And the Bills had a couple years where they didn't do that. And they were picking, back-to-back defensive ends and Gregory Rousseau and Boogie Basham. The year before that, AJ Epinesa in the second round. I think it's time for the Bills to prioritize the wide receiver spot. That doesn't necessarily mean they have to pick one in round one, but in one of the first two rounds, that's really where you're going to get your marquee talent. Stephon Diggs just turned 30 years old. I think he can still be an elite level wide receiver. And even if he regresses a little bit into his 30s, you're still talking about a top 10 receiver in the NFL, but planning for the future with Josh Allen, I think wide receiver to me would be the biggest, but also safety, given the ages of Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer, their contracts. And then defensive tackle, the fact that Ed Oliver is the only player at that position who is signed beyond this year. And we know how important Sean McDermott, places that emphasis on rotating those defensive linemen on his defense.
Yeah, so talk to us a little bit quickly about wide receiver that, in terms of young talent the Bills have now. So you don't anticipate Shakir being or having the ability to be that kind of guy, or even Justin Shorter, who, I'm watching Green Bay with Christian Watson, and Shorter for me is sort of the same guy, but maybe with not the same experiences in college. Yes, he went into college right as the number one ranked high school senior at his position, but never really developed between Penn State and Florida. Here he is now, 1 year into an NFL team. Do you think he could maybe develop into one of those guys?
Yeah, that's a good question. What I'll say about Justin Shorter is just the opinion that I had when the Bills drafted him in the 5th round. I thought he was a pick to be insurance for Gabe Davis, because if you watch both of those players in college, and really where Gabe Davis has become the most successful in this Bills offense is down the football field. I think we've seen through now 4 seasons that Gabe Davis is not a complete number 2 wide receiver who's getting open all the time, who's creating after the catch, who's very, very reliable with his hands, but down the field, he's very good. And that's where Justin Shorter ultimately thrived at Florida after transferring from Penn State, where he was that top recruit, like you mentioned. So I think going into next season, you would have Khalil Shakir, who to me, I don't know if he'll ever be that classic number 2. I think he can be a very good slot receiver, number 3 target in the progression. And I think Justin Shorter can be that Gabe Davis type who you really want to just use on post routes, on go routes. They still have that need for a number 2 who can eventually become a number 1 after the Stephon Diggs era is over. So I don't hate moving forward what the Bills have secondarily in their wide receiver room, but I do think they still need to prioritize that position relatively early in the draft.
With a reliable, dependable playmaker. Yeah, for sure. Very quickly, give me a score prediction for Sunday.
All right. I was on another podcast recently. I said 27-21 Bills. I think if there's a team that should feel decently confident going into Arrowhead Stadium, it's the Bills. I mean, they have the 2 losses in the playoffs, but the past 2 years, obviously, we know that they've won in the regular season there. Now, that's saying something, because I don't think really any other team can say, hey, we're going into Arrowhead, we're feeling really confident about that. Beyond that, I think we've all seen that the Chiefs are not really clicking offensively. They have some injuries on the defensive side, and that's really buoyed them this season, their defense, with Drew Tranquill, who's been a great coverage linebacker for them. One of their starting safeties, Brian Cook, got hurt, and they're going to be probably without their starting left tackle, Donovan Smith, who has had his struggles, but is a veteran left tackle. He's also been very good at stretches this season. They're going to start a rookie at left tackle against the Bills. And again, the Joe Brady impact with Josh Allen, I think just a lot of empty sets, a lot of 4 and 5 wide receiver sets to give Josh Allen a lot of space, just a lot of different options in the pass game, and the fact that the Bills have started to run the football better. And if there's one area that this a lot stronger Chiefs defense is a little bit susceptible, it's on the ground. So a lot of teams, I think, get a little antsy and get a little overwhelmed going into Arrowhead. I don't think Josh Allen and this Bills team will necessarily do that, which will lead to them getting another relatively close game, but this time actually coming out with a victory.
Well, great stuff, man. CBS sports analyst Chris Trapasso, at Chris Trapasso on the X. Happy holidays, man. I really appreciate you doing this.